Ladies and gentlemen, the Wall Street Journal editorial board today published an editorial that is the reason that Republicans don't have the House and don't have the Senate. And it's ironic because they're asking people to move on from Trump, and they're exhibiting the same behavior that led to Democrats running the government. The Wall Street Journal should know that there's no other Republican capable of harnessing or capturing the energy and enthusiasm of, over 74 million Americans. That doesn't exist. That person doesn't exist. Mitt Romney cannot. Ben Sasse cannot. The good Republicans that vote alongside Trump 90% of the time, Cheney, Kinzinger, they cannot. If you go to I have the link from 538 below. All of the never Trump Republicans vote alongside him over 90% of the time. Mitch McConnell, who you can blame for losing the Senate because of his negotiation. Check out the segment prior to this one, where I talk about Trump being right. When McConnell negotiated down to a $600 stimulus check, when Democrats were running on a $2,000 stimulus check, he did Republicans no good. Obviously, you're going to lose. When you're telling people in the worst financial crisis, self-induced in many cases, okay, but the worst financial crisis in decades, you're telling people, we're not going to give you, we have to be fiscally conservative now. We have to give you $600, not $2,000. At least the Democrats waited until they had political power to say, we're not even going to give you the money that we promised. But hit subscribe to this channel right now. I will have a live stream tonight at around 8 p.m. And, ladies and gentlemen, we'll read you. Trump hits back at WSJ editorial, urging GOP to move on. Now, if you want to read this, if you want to read a little bit of this editorial, the grievances of Trump past. If he was so great politically for the GOP, why is the party now out of power? Well, let's see. You have every conceivable possible advantage for Democrats. You have Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, Trevor Noah, all of Hollywood, all of Twitter, every social media algorithm. You have Republicans who went after Trump, Sasse, Romney, McCain, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell wasn't always on his side. You had intelligence operatives that went after Trump that even the Wall Street Journal acknowledges set up and framed President Trump. There was never any evidence that he worked alongside Russia to buy Facebook ads or Putin to influence anyone 4 years ago, but they tried to. The establishment, you're talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, are essentially extensions of the Democratic Party. Every single absurd narrative that were based on completely baseless allegations to accuse somebody of working with Putin because Facebook ads that half were seen after the election, Facebook ads that nobody can even describe. Have you ever asked a person who has derangement issues pertaining to Trump if they can describe a Facebook ad that made a person go from Clinton to Trump? It doesn't exist. Mueller found no evidence. The evidence was insufficient. Okay, he never worked with Russia. That wasn't a peaceful transition of power. They tried to delegitimize and undermine his presidency from day one. And then they complained, oh my God, oh my God. We had the streets of this country. We had $1 to $2 billion in property damage, according to Wikipedia. 19 lives lost, over 19 lives lost, 19 lives lost according to Wikipedia, in very peaceful demonstrations. And CNN, and they all swept it under the rug. And yes, it was a tragedy what took place, and President Trump shouldn't even have had that day. He should have went ahead and fostered a dialogue, discourse, discussion, debate. But everything's Trump's fault. Nothing is taken with context. And if he was so great politically, the underlying, the inference here, or they're trying to insinuate that, well, maybe somebody else would be a lot better. But Democrats and media are never again, they already have the recipe. Paint the adversary as a tyrant, a despot, an authoritarian. They would do the same thing to Mitt Romney. Is the Wall Street Journal under the impression that if a kindler, gentler Republican were at the helm, that media would give that person a fair chance? Well, that person wouldn't be on Twitter. Okay. Or the Twitter presence might be different. President Trump did this to himself in many ways, in a sense, yes. He gave them exactly what they wanted, to paint him as a despot, an authoritarian, a tyrant, a bully. It's true. Towards the end of his presidency, President Trump gave them exactly what they wanted. Towards the end of his presidency, President Trump gave them exactly what they wanted, because his presence on Twitter was more than counterproductive. He should never have insulted LeBron James. He should never have insulted NFL athletes. He should never have insulted people. There was no point to it. Hitting back all the time, there's no point to. That is one of the things, though, that's his Achilles heel. It's one of the things that made him great. Not great, but one of the things that made him unique. And one of the things that made him special or endeared him to millions. But he took it overboard. He didn't have to engage in that type of rhetoric, because it did him no good, even if he was lashing out, even if he was hitting back, even if he was counterpunching. Because it allowed every single aspect of American politics, political discourse, Hollywood, social, everything in American society is leveled against Trump. So when they say, well, why? They say the grievances of Trump's past. If he was so great politically for the GOP, why is the party now out of power? Well, number one, no other Republican could have come close to defeating Hillary Clinton. So the Wall Street Journal ignores that. Hillary Clinton would have easily demolished any other Republican. Jeb Bush, she would have demolished. Because at that point, media was the same media, but even they were expecting an enormous victory. You had, just like now, it wasn't as apoplectic, if you could believe that, but there was no momentum for any other Republican. The GOP has turned into a populist political party. They don't want never-ending conflicts. People who choose President Trump do not want never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. Okay? But here, the great sigh of relief you heard on Sunday was the sound of Democrats and media welcoming Donald Trump's return to public attention with his speech to the conservative political action. What would Washington Post writers do without him? As for Republicans and Mr. Trump, the future isn't as clear as the press and former president would like. The conservatives cheered his speech, which was largely a collection of greatest political hits, but if CPAC represented America, Mr. Trump would still reside in the White House, not Mar-a-Lago. Okay, well, you had Republicans who have gone after Trump. You had social media presence that hurt Trump. You had other issues. He lost to Joe Biden, the old Democratic warhorse, by 7 million votes. He also lost 5 states he carried in 2016, even Georgia. Okay, so that's the cold GOP reality. Yeah, it is the cold GOP reality. The Republicans never rallied around Trump. The Republicans never rallied around their actual leader. The Republicans never rallied around a president, a conservative president, a Republican president, a populist president. They investigated. What do you expect? To the Wall Street Journal, what do you expect? The man was investigated for 3 years on baseless allegations from James Clapper and a GOP Senate panel that confirmed James Clapper's opinion. These are baseless allegations. You think Twitter? Then Twitter not only never put a disclaimer on any absurd claims that Trump worked with Putin, but didn't even allow the New York Post to run a story on Biden's son, which was clear emails and clear pay-to-play schemes that people normally would have investigated at the Washington Post and New York Times. So, I mean, what do you expect? You have every conceivable possible advantage against Trump. Every conceivable possible advantage. What do you expect? I mean, what do you expect? You have every single possible conceivable advantage, and it's like at a certain point you have to realize that it's the Democratic Party and Republicans against one man that 70 plus million Americans voted for. And those, like Mitt Romney got 60 million last time against President Obama. He's not going to get past 60 million. And Mitt Romney got 60 million Americans, and that's with the Republican Party firmly behind Trump and Romney, and with a media objective, like a more objective than they were a million times more objective than they were the past 5-6 years. President Trump's Twitter presence did him in, and that is an unfortunate reality. He gave media and Republicans the ammunition they needed. He gave Republicans the ability to say, okay, well, we don't like his personality. We're going to stand up against him. And they voted alongside Trump 90% of the time, according to 538. Okay, Trump lost to Biden because the Republicans didn't rally around, didn't support President Trump for 4 years. You had Jeff Sessions. And then they talk about these absurd message boards that I was against 2+ years ago. I told you, look, almost 3 years ago, I said, delete your Twitter account. I deleted my Twitter account around 3 years ago. Delete your Facebook account. Don't listen to absurd message boards. And now it's interesting. Democrats don't want to find out who runs those absurd message boards. Why not? They shut down any, problematic sites, so why don't they find out who runs the message boards? Gee, I wonder why. But here, that's the cold GOP reality as the former president seeks to dominate the party from exile and tease a 2024 comeback. Mr. Trump boasted about his record, and he took credit for every GOP success. His estimable polling. We welcome the debate, but if 2020 was so fabulous, nobody's saying 2020 was fabulous. It was horrible. Why are Republicans shut out of power? And down Pennsylvania Avenue. Up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. They have zero influence over the $1.9 trillion spending extravaganza they rightly deplore. Well, they have zero influence because of people like Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse, Kinzinger, Cheney. You don't have an opposition party. Therefore, you don't have a different viewpoint in American political discourse. It's either firmly against Trump or, kind of against Democrats, but still firmly against Trump. And anyone who is pro-Trump gets hit pieces and, mocked and denigrated and insulted and demeaned and undermined, while at the same time they say Trump is the bully. Okay, they're going after Madison Cawthorn now with one of the publications that published the Steele dossier. By the way, Twitter didn't run disclaimers in the Steele dossier. This is disputed. These are disputed claims. These are baseless claims. The dossier was literally a bunch of nonsense and garbage purchased by Clinton. Okay, so what is it that the tables? It's not a level playing field. It's not a level playing field. They're trying to say, well, this didn't have to happen. Incumbent presidential races are typically consolidating elections as the party in power reinforces gains from years earlier. Yeah, when was the last time a Republican attorney general allowed a special counsel based on a fired FBI director's memos and a dossier purchased by Clinton and hearsay from Alexander Downer, an ambassador. When was the last time a Republican administration did this to a Republican president? You think Reagan would have? You think Bush? I mean, no Republican would have survived this. No Democrat would have if the Democrats treated a Democratic president the way that Trump was treated. Did he do this to himself? In some ways, yes. In some ways, yes. What happened is they poked and prodded at him, and he lost his cool. He lost his ability to, see the overall picture. That's why he lost the election. He was unable to harness the negativity on Twitter. And when you are constantly provoking an entire public relations monstrosity from Hollywood to the Washington Post, the New York Times, granted, it's more than this, that the Republicans were after him. He did great things. He was the first president to step foot in North Korea to begin détente between North and South Korea. He presided over record low unemployment throughout most of his tenure. That shot in the arm you're getting, okay, that's Trump. That was on Trump's watch, okay? They said that it wouldn't happen. I mean, I have to speak in roundabout terms because the algorithm it's like there's every conceivable possible advantage. Liberal pundits or liberal channels, they don't have to worry about the algorithm. Well, actually, they do. Actually, the left, the progressives actually do. They've actually suffered a great deal. Because the suppression of thought actually started hitting the left recently. But that starts from the Democratic Party. There's no pushback. You have people who are never Trumpers who bask in the glory and the admiration of media who will jettison them in 2 seconds once Trump's out of the picture completely in terms of politics, which isn't going to happen. It's a populist political party. People who vote Republican now want an end to never-ending regime changes. They want an end to all of these things. They want tariffs instead of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They want an end to these things. The USMCA, NAFTA into the USMCA. They want a more populist message. Bernie Sanders had the ability to go ahead and, for a second, offer the Democratic Party a populist message, and that's why there's a direct correlation between Bernie and Trump, because there's a great many ideas that overlap. And then you have the left, the horseshoe theory. It's like, no, it's more along the lines of populists. Doesn't matter where in the political spectrum you are, don't like never-ending conflict. And they focus on workers. And we had manufacturing jobs. We had 300 to 500,000 manufacturing jobs created under President Trump. And that, obviously, after the pandemic, wasn't the case. But he was able to do great things. 300,000 manufacturing jobs were lost under President Obama. And we could talk about, his accomplishments were never championed. It was partly his fault, but it was mainly the fault of Republicans. And then the Wall Street Journal says, well, why didn't he win? It's like, well, he had every conceivable possible disadvantage. And you still can't talk about things. So there you go. President Biden is governing in a manner that does not suit the left. And he's sent to, they kept saying that he's going to protect democracy and to protect what is he doing to protect democracy and uphold the Constitution? I want to know. I want to know what he's doing. Because all I've seen now is endless mistakes and catastrophic decisions. Give me your thoughts below. The Wall Street Journal is a great publication. Gee, it would be nice if Trump had one publication. He has the New York Post. God bless the New York Post. God bless the New York Post. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. I'll be back later tonight for the live stream. Thank you.